a WikiVidi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Daylight saving time in the United States. Daylight saving time in the United States is the practice of setting the clock forward by 1 hour during the warmer part of the year, so that evenings have more daylight and mornings have less. Most areas of the United States observe daylight saving time, the exceptions being Arizona, Hawaii, and the overseas territories of American Samoa, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, and the United States Virgin Islands. In the U.S., daylight saving time starts on the second Sunday in March and ends on the first Sunday in November, with the time changes taking place at 2 a.m. local time, with a mnemonic wordplay referring to seasons, clocks, spring forward, fall back, that is, in springtime the clocks are moved forward from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., and in fall they are moved back from 2 a.m. to 1 a.m. Daylight saving time lasts for a total of 34 weeks every year, about 65% of the entire year. The following table lists recent past and near future starting and ending dates of daylight saving time in the United States. History of DST in the United States. Benjamin Franklin proposed a form of daylight time in 1784. His essay, An Economical Project for Diminishing the Cost of Light, written to the editor of the Journal of Paris, observed that Parisians could save on candles by getting out of bed earlier in the morning, making use of the natural morning light instead. Franklin's suggestion seems to have been more of a joke than a real proposal, and nothing came of it. 1916-1966, early, inconsistent use. During World War I, in an effort to conserve fuel, Germany began observing DST on May 1, 1916. The rest of Europe soon followed. The plan was not adopted in the United States until the Standard Time Act of March 19, 1918, which confirmed the existing Standard Time Zone system and set summer DST to begin on March 31, 1918. The idea was unpopular and Congress abolished DST after the war, overriding President Woodrow Wilson's veto. DST became a local option and was observed in some states until World War II, when President Franklin Roosevelt instituted year-round DST, called wartime, on February 9, 1942. It lasted until the last Sunday in September 1945. After 1945, many states and cities east of the Mississippi River adopted summer DST. From 1945 to 1966 there was no federal law on daylight saving time, so localities could choose when it began and ended or drop it entirely. As of 1954, only California and Nevada had statewide DST west of the Mississippi, and only a few cities between Nevada and St. Louis. In the 1964 official railway guide, 21 of the 48 contiguous states had no DST anywhere. 1966-1972, federal standard established. By 1962, the transportation industry found the lack of consistency confusing enough to push for federal regulation. The result was the Uniform Time Act of 1966. Beginning in 1967, the Act mandated standard time within the established time zones and provided for advanced time. Clocks would be advanced 1 hour beginning at 2 a.m. on the last Sunday in April and turned back 1 hour at 2 a.m. on the last Sunday in October. States were allowed to exempt themselves from DST as long as the entire state did so. If a state chose to observe DST, the time changes were required to begin and end on the established dates. In 1967, Arizona and Michigan became the first states to exempt themselves from DST. In 1972, the Act was amended, allowing those states split between time zones to exempt either the entire state or that part of the state lying within a different time zone. The newly created Department of Transportation was given power to enforce the law. As of 2014, the following states and territories are not observing DST: Arizona, Hawaii, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. 1973-1975, year-round experiment. During the 1973 oil embargo by the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, in an effort to conserve fuel, Congress enacted a trial period of year-round DST, beginning January 6, 1974, and ending April 27, 1975. The trial was hotly debated. Those in favor pointed to increased daylight hours in the winter evening, more time for recreation, reduced lighting and heating demands, reduced crime, and reduced automobile accidents. The opposition was concerned about children leaving for school in the dark. The act was amended in October 1974 to return to standard time for the period beginning October 27, 1974, and ending February 23, 1975, when DST resumed. When the trial ended in 1975, the country returned to observing summer DST. 1975-1986, Extension of Daylight Saving Time. The DOT, evaluating the plan of extending DST into March, reported in 1975 that modest overall benefits might be realized by a shift from the historic 6-month DST in areas of energy conservation, overall traffic safety and reduced violent crime. However, DOT also reported that these benefits were minimal and difficult to distinguish from seasonal variations and fluctuations in energy prices. Congress then asked the National Bureau of Standards to evaluate the DOT report. Its report, review, and technical evaluation of the DOT Daylight Saving Time study found no significant energy savings or differences in traffic fatalities. It did find statistically significant evidence of increased fatalities among school-aged children in the mornings during the 4-month period January-April 1974 as compared with the same period of 1973. NBS stated that it was impossible to determine what, if any, of this increase was due to DST. When this data was compared between 1973 and 1974 for the months of March and April, no significant difference was found in fatalities among school-aged children in the mornings. In 1986, Congress enacted PL 99-359, amending the Uniform Time Act by changing the beginning of DST to the first Sunday in April and having the end remain the last Sunday in October. These start and end dates were in effect from 1987 to 2006. The time was adjusted at 2 a.m. local time. 2005-2009, second extension. By the Energy Policy Act of 2005, daylight saving time was extended in the United States beginning in 2007. As from that year, DST begins on the second Sunday of March and ends on the first Sunday of November. In years when April 1st falls on Monday through Wednesday, these changes result in a DST period that is 5 weeks longer. In all other years the DST period is instead 4 weeks longer. In 2008 daylight saving time ended at 2 a.m. DST on Sunday, November 2nd, and in 2009 it began at 2 a.m. on Sunday, March 8th. Wyoming Senator Michael Enzi and Michigan Representative Fred Upton advocated the extension from October into November especially to allow children to go trick-or-treating in more daylight. Under Section 110 of the Act, the U.S. Department of Energy was required to study the impact of the 2007 DST extension no later than 9 months after the change took effect. The report, released in October 2008, reported a nationwide electricity savings of 0.03% for the year of 2007. An October 2008 study conducted by the University of California at Santa Barbara for the National Bureau of Economic Research found that the 2006 DST adoption in Indiana increased energy consumption in Indiana by an average of 1%. Although consumption for lighting dropped as a result of the DST adoption, consumption for heating and cooling increased by 2% to 4%. The cost to the average Indiana household of the DST adoption was determined to be $3.29 per year, for an aggregate cost of $1.7 million to $5.5 million per year. Changing an area's time zone. Under the Standard Time Act of 1918, as amended by the Uniform Time Act of 1966, moving a state or an area within a state from one time zone to another requires a regulation issued by DOT. The governor or state legislature may initiate a request for the state or any part of the state. The highest elected officials in the county may make a request for that county. The standard in the statute for such decisions is the convenience of commerce in that area. The convenience of commerce is defined broadly to consider such circumstances as the shipment of goods within the community, the origin of television and radio broadcasts, the areas where most residents work, attend school, worship, or receive health care, the location of airports, railway, and bus stations, and the major elements of the community's economy. After receiving a request for altering a time zone, DOT determines whether it meets the requirement of minimum statutory criteria before issuing a notice of proposed rulemaking, soliciting public comment and scheduling a public hearing. Usually the hearing is held in the area requesting the change so that all affected parties can be represented. After the close of the comment period, the comments are reviewed and appropriate final action taken. If the Secretary agrees that the statutory requirement has been met, the change is instituted, usually at the next changeover to or from DST. Moving an area on or off DST. Under the Uniform Time Act, moving an area on or off DST is accomplished through legal action at the state level. Some states require legislation while others require executive action such as a governor's executive order. Information on procedures required in a specific state may be obtained from that state's legislature or governor's office, although it may exempt itself. If a state decides to observe DST, the dates of observance must comply with federal legislation. Alaska. Alaska observes DST. Due to its high latitude, Alaska has nearly round-the-clock daylight during summer, and DST is seen by some Alaskans as unnecessary and a nuisance. Another issue is that the Alaskan mainland's single time zone, which approximates solar time in the capital, Juneau, leads to a large disparity between civil time and solar time for much of the state, with solar noon occurring as late as 2 p.m. in the population centers of Anchorage and Fairbanks, and as late as 3 p.m. in places such as Nome. In Fairbanks, for example, sunset occurs well after civil midnight in the summer. Others argue that ending daylight saving time will place Alaska as much as 5 hours from Eastern Daylight Time, making coordination of travel and phone conversations more difficult. In March 2015, the Alaska Senate passed a bill, introduced by State Senator Anna McKinnon, to end daylight saving time. The Alaska House formed a subcommittee that was due to look into the issue during the 2016 legislative session. Arizona. Arizona observed DST in 1967 under the Uniform Time Act, because the state legislature did not enact an exemption statute that year. In March 1968, the DST exemption statute was enacted and the state of Arizona has not observed DST since 1967. This is in large part due to an effort to conserve energy. Phoenix and Tucson are among the hottest U.S. metropolitan areas during the summer, resulting in more power usage from air conditioning units and evaporative coolers in homes and businesses. An extra hour of sunlight while people are active would cause people to run their cooling systems longer, thereby using more energy. Reservations in Arizona. The Navajo Indian Reservation extends into Utah and New Mexico and does observe daylight saving time. The Hopi Reservation is entirely within the state of Arizona and is an enclave within the Navajo Indian Reservation, but does not observe DST. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?